Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Travel Pointers, the podcast for frequent flyers. It's October 2024 and I'm Chris Chamberlain, news editor at Point Hacks.
And I'm Matt Graham, the editor of Australian Frequent Flyer. Later in this episode, we're going to talk about some of the easiest ways to earn frequent flyer points without flying, and the ultimate frequent flyer redemption, flying first class. But first, if you'll pardon the pun, let's talk about some of the airline and travel news from the past month. And Chris, Turkish Airlines is coming to Sydney.
Turkish Airlines is, so they currently fly to Melbourne and they've decided to add Sydney to their network, which is something they'd flagged previously. They're going to start in early December, so it'll be just in time for school holidays, 5th of December start. It flies from Istanbul to Sydney, but those flights will go through Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So the existing Melbourne route goes via Singapore. Sydney will go via KL. And these flights run 4 times a week. And of course, Turkish Airlines is a member of Star Alliance. So you're able to book these flights with any Star Alliance reward points. The most popular for Aussies would no doubt be Singapore Airlines KrisFlyer. And this new route into Sydney is the first step into what Turkish Airlines hopes will become non-stop flights between Istanbul and Australia. They're hoping to do this route and Melbourne as well on the A350-1000, which is the aircraft that Qantas is using for Project Sunrise. But for now, this will be an Airbus A350 flight. In business class, the seats will actually look almost identical to what you see on the regional business class product of Singapore Airlines. So these are the seats that have that big wing down the side that perhaps block some of the window views, unfortunately. But look, they're comfortable. It's a flatbed. It's direct aisle access, and it will be quite comfortable. So I've not yet had a chance to fly with Turkish Airlines, but Matt, you have.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Turkish is great in business class. There's a chef on board as well, and the food is excellent. But for those in economy, it's also a pretty good product in economy. 333 on the A350. I have flown on this aircraft earlier this year. And it was very comfortable. The good in-flight entertainment, live TV on board, and the food on Turkish Airlines. I'm a huge fan, especially when it's catered out of Istanbul. It's lovely Turkish food. So a great product for Sydney, and it'll be good for Turkish to complement the Melbourne flights now, also with Sydney flights.
I'm very excited. I managed to get a reward seat for early next year, and out of Istanbul. So I really look forward to trying that food. But we also have another piece of news for Fifth Freedom flyers, and that is that Emirates will unfortunately be ending its flights between Melbourne and Singapore. Now, Emirates obviously has direct flights between Dubai and Australia, but out of Melbourne, there was an additional service that ran Melbourne to Dubai via Singapore, and you could actually book just the Melbourne-Singapore segment without having to fly to Dubai on the same ticket, same day, anything like that. There's not currently a date that we know that they'll finish. We just know that they'll be wrapping up likely sometime in 2025, subject to approval by the Singaporean authorities. Now, there's a bit of a points hack on the Melbourne-Singapore route, which we'll get into a bit later in this episode. But there's a bit of news in North American airspace, Matt. What's happening there?
Yeah, so another route announcement. Qantas is going to be launching flights next May from Melbourne to Honolulu 3 times a week on the Airbus A330. They'll actually be replacing Jetstar's flights on that route. So currently Jetstar's flying twice a week with Boeing 787s. So a lot more premium seats on that route now with Qantas coming on, and another option other than just Jetstar for people who want to fly from Melbourne to Honolulu direct. But Qantas and Jetstar will continue as well flying from Sydney to Honolulu.
Great if you're trying to upgrade with points, because you can't do that on Jetstar. With Qantas, though, you can upgrade into business. That would be nice on that route.
In other news, Qatar Airways has increased the fees you need to pay, unfortunately, when you redeem Avios to book Qatar Airways flights. And, I'm not talking about, of course, the government and airports, taxes and fees, but the carrier charges that the Privilege Club program itself charges when you redeem Avios. And it's interesting, like a lot of airlines have different names for these fees. Some airlines call them fuel surcharges, although they don't really have anything to do with the price of fuel. Some airlines call them insurance surcharges. Qantas calls them carrier charges. Qatar Airways now is just calling them a redemption fee. And I've also seen Qatar referring to these as reward fees, which seems like a bit of an oxymoron. But just to give you an idea, on a redemption from Melbourne to London, for example, via Doha, flying Qatar Airways business class, previously you would have paid for a one-way ticket about $360 in taxes and fees. It's now $534. So what Qatar's done basically is they used to just have a charge or a carrier charge, which was done per segment. It used to be $25 in economy and $50 in business class. And of course, that would be converted into the local currency when you book the flight. And that would be per segment. What they're doing now is they've increased the charges on longer routes. but it's based on the origin and destination. It's not per segment anymore, but it's like a fixed redemption fee. But it is on most routes, definitely in and out of Australia at least, and on most of the longer flights, it is now unfortunately more. That's not the only thing they've done though. As you might know, Qatar Airways partners with Virgin Australia. You can redeem Qatar Avios to book Virgin Australia flights. On a flight from Perth to Melbourne, for example, you used to pay, it's 11,000 Avios in economy, 22,000 Avios in business, plus $42 in taxes. Now, the Avios amounts are still the same, but the taxes have increased quite dramatically. It's now $107 in economy or $310 in business class.
At that rate, they're not taxes, are they? That's really hitting those reward fees hard.
No, so I had a look at what was going on the, and that's just the Perth to Melbourne route. If you have a look at any Virgin Australia route, there's sort of similar increases as well. On the Perth to Melbourne route, Qatar is now when you redeem Qatar Avios to book on Virgin Australia in business, they've added a redemption fee of about 244 Australian dollars, which is utterly ridiculous. I don't know any airline. Other than Qatar that's charging such high fees on a domestic flight within Australia. And they've also added on about $27 in GST, which is just being charged because of that redemption fee. So in the end, it adds up to about $310, even though the actual taxes, the airport fees and things like that haven't changed.
It starts to get to the point where some of these fees can begin to become what you would pay for an airfare. If you're getting business class for $300 coast to coast, that's still a good deal if you're buying a ticket. But that's a lot to pay in fees when you've already earned all of those points and you're trying to turn them into a reward. It's like you're paying a fee to get a reward and then you're being taxed on your reward. It's not ideal.
No, certainly not ideal. But what is ideal, Chris, for travellers flying out of Broome, excuse the segue, is a new lounge being built there.
I had a pun lined up for this, and that the lounge does have a very good sweeping view of the airport, Matt. I've been holding that one in, waiting to share that. But
Oh no, Chris! Oh, that's terrible.
this is a sign I need coffee or something, apparently. But yes, Qantas is expanding its lounge in Broome, and I've flown through there once before, and I was very excited. It was the only place in that airport that was air conditioned at the time I flew through in the middle of summer, so I was really happy to have Qantas lounge access that day. But they are doubling the size of the lounge, just make it look a bit more nice, a bit more modern. It is still a regional lounge, but it's planned to be all completed by December. So again, in time for school holidays. New lounge when flying through Broome. They have seasonal flights direct from Broome to Sydney and Melbourne, and of course they fly from Broome to Perth year round.
Nice. And I believe Qantas is also working on its Adelaide lounge at the moment.
Qantas is, and I've seen a lot of reports of people being admitted to what was previously the Qantas Chairman's Lounge as something of a fill-in business class platinum space, and everyone's very happy about that. But of course, it's the business service. But yeah, Qantas is trying to introduce, in the process of introducing the 3 tiers of lounges in Adelaide, the same as they have in the other major capitals. You'll have a Qantas Club, which is already there. You'll have a business lounge, which for Adelaide is what will be brand new. And then they'll be refurbishing the Chairman's Lounge as well for those VIP invite-only type frequent flyers. But what's mostly exciting for most people is the invention of a business lounge. I've always felt that Qantas Club is just a little bit better than most other Qantas clubs, purely for the basis that there's nowhere else for the platinum members to go, nowhere else for the business class passengers to go. So the food always seems a little bit better. It's the only Qantas club I've had people bring coffee to my seat when I'm sitting there working on a laptop because the staff are looking to actively help you. It's a really nice space. So I really look forward to seeing what they do, adding a business lounge into that space. But if you do have gold or platinum status with Qantas, you might find it hard some years to actually renew that status, depending on how much you're flying. And there is a little bit of a cheeky way how you can retain it if you haven't flown enough. Matt, how can you do that?
This is something that a lot of Australian frequent flyer members have been talking about recently on our forum, and I'll link to the thread and the article in the show notes. But normally, if you've got gold or platinum status and you're a little bit short of renewing it, you would have to do a status run. So you might book a weekend away to New Zealand or whatever it might be to make up for that shortfall in status credits. But you might not have to do that now because Qantas is inviting selected gold and platinum members to, if they don't have enough status credits to renew their status, instead to spend some points and get to keep their status for another year. It's 80,000 points if you're extending your gold status for a year, or 120,000 points to extend platinum status. There's a little hack here as well. Qantas is inviting some members to do this if Qantas can see that they won't be earning enough to extend their status. But even if you don't get an invitation, you can actually just call the Qantas Frequent Flyer Service Centre and ask. And now it's not guaranteed. They may not make this offer available to everyone, so don't count on it, I guess. But if you are looking at potentially potentially losing your status in the next couple of months, it could be something that means you don't have to book an unnecessary trip.
For Platinum members in particular, that is a big ask in points, but the appeal of benefits like the Qantas First Lounge, the one I love is being able to call and have a reward seat created for you if there's just no flight available to book using points. These are just some of the benefits of Platinum that I guess keeping your status retains, because 120,000 is more than enough for a business class ticket over to LA. So it's not an insignificant balance. But
Mm.
again, if you're used to the high life when you're flying through the airport, it can be very hard to give up, even if you're no longer flying as much for work or whatever had you earning those status credits in the first place. So I think that's a really cool thing that you can do with your points. Do you need some help to find those elusive frequent flyer reward seats at the front of the plane? Sign up to the free Point Hacks Reward Seat Alerts newsletter and be the first to know when we find new reward seats to popular destinations with your favorite frequent flyer programs. Go to pointhacks.com.au/reward seat alerts or click on the link in the show notes to sign up. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know that you can earn frequent flyer points by flying and through credit cards, and that includes credit card sign-up offers, which can give you a lot of extra points. And look, you might also be earning points by shopping at places like Coles and Woolworths, but there are lots more ways to earn points as well, and some of them might not be immediately obvious.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. I mean, I actually had a look at how I earn my Qantas points and my Velocity points recently, and I was quite surprised to find that the number one way that I earn Qantas points is from buying wine, which probably makes me a little bit of an alcoholic. I hope not, but
Are you not drinking enough on the plane?
well, the thing is, I don't drink that much, so I end up with a cupboard full of wine at home, and I often give it away as gifts and things. But the reason I'm buying that wine is that the bonus points and offer are just so good. Some of our listeners might be aware of the bonus point offers that Qantas Wine offers. For example, I got a case just recently which cost me about $500, and it came with 30,000 bonus points on top of the 3 points per dollar you get as a Qantas Wine Premium member. During that time, it also came with a free bottle of champagne if you spent over a certain amount. And then there's the Qantas Business Reward points you get on top of that, and any points you're earning for the spend on your credit card.
And that bonus itself is more than enough for a business class ticket from Brisbane to Melbourne, for instance. So you're getting a business class flight, you're getting a case of wine, you're getting a bottle of champagne, you're getting all your extra points. Knowing you're probably getting a green tea leaf or something as well. On top of that, this is why you're buying wine. You're not buying wine for the wine. You are buying wine for the points, aren't you?
Well, that's exactly right. And I mean, most of the wine is pretty good as well. I find most of what I've bought is quite drinkable, but that's exactly right. I kind of treat it as buying points and getting wine for free, which because like the amount that I'm paying for the wine is actually less than the value of the flights that I'm redeeming for in most cases. So certainly got no shortage of wine at home, but there's so many other ways as well that you can earn points other than the obvious things of flying and spending on credit cards. I mean, I earn quite a lot of points through Qantas hotels. When there's special promotions on, you can take advantage of those. And I know on the Australian Frequent Flyer Forum, a lot of our members will often look for loopholes in those promotions to try and maximize the points that you can earn. I also earn quite a lot. You mentioned just before, Chris, that a lot of people earn points through Coles and Woolworths. Of course, Coles partners through their Flybuys program with Velocity. You can transfer the Flybuys points you're earning at Coles over to Velocity, and Woolworths Everyday Rewards points you can transfer over to Qantas points. I earn quite a lot of Flybuys and Everyday Rewards points, which then, of course, in turn then get transferred to Qantas and Velocity through the boosters in the case of Everyday Rewards and the targeted bonus point offers with Flybuys. I had a look last year. I earned over 100,000 bonus Flybuys points just from those targeted offers. Like they'll send these offers to you by email. Like if you spend $100 this week, we'll give you 6,000 points, or if you spend it might be spend $50 for each week for 4 weeks at Coles, and we'll give you 10,000 Flybuys points. And those offers stack as well. So often when I'm shopping at Coles, I'm getting bonus points on 2 or 3 different offers, and they really add up over time. But it's not the only way you can earn lots of bonus points at Coles and Woolies, Chris.
No, that's right. So you did mention bonus offers, and one of the things that the supermarkets tend to do from time to time is they offer bonus points buying gift cards. And this is where it gets interesting, because if you're buying a gift card, ideally, I mean, firstly, you're either buying it as a gift for somebody that you're going to be giving to them anyway, or if you're being strategic about it, you're buying a gift for yourself. So if, I don't know, let's say the bonus points are on Apple gift cards and you're in the market for a new phone. Well, if you bought those supermarket gift cards, and when I say supermarket gift cards, these are gift cards purchased at a supermarket. So in this case, an Apple gift card. If you buy that Apple gift card when the supermarket is running a bonus points offer, you're basically spending money you were already going to spend. You take all of these bonus points, probably enough for a free flight, because these offers tend to be 10 or even 20 times points on some of these gift cards, and you then redeem the cards as normal. So, obviously, look, to be honest, this isn't something I spend a lot of time doing. My colleague Brandon is an absolute pro at it. I take my hat off to him. He has written a fantastic article, keeps it up to date with all the latest bonus points offers. So, we'll link to that in the show notes so that you can see what some of the latest offers are and bookmark that because it gets updated when new bonus points offers go out.
A lot of people will use this trick if they can get a good bonus points offer on a card that you can use at JB Hi-Fi, for example. If you're buying a new phone or a new computer, like you could go to Coles or Woolies, get the gift cards with the 10 times or 20 times bonus points, then go straight to JB Hi-Fi, redeem them for your new computer or your new phone. You might get a couple of questions and you might need to show your ID if you're using multiple gift cards towards your purchase. But I know a lot of people use this to earn literally tens of thousands of bonus points on their purchase.
It's a nice little earner. I mean, one of the other sneaky things that's fun to do if you're out with friends, particularly if you have friends who really aren't in the frequent flyer game, is that when it comes to the time to pay the bill, if they're not doing split billing, well, why don't you be the person who puts the bill on your credit card? As long as you can trust all your friends to obviously send you their share of the bill, but you'd then earn points on the entire amount of the bill. It's a handy little thing to do, but I personally try and just take the opportunity to earn points everywhere. If I'm using a ride share, I'm earning points. If I'm going to a supermarket, petrol station, flying, hotels, whatever I can do. In fact, I had a catch up once with the CEO of Velocity Frequent Flyer, Nick Rolak, and he mentioned that of of all of the Velocity members in the entire program, I was the member who'd earned the points with the most number of partners. And that's simply just by trying to earn points at every opportunity. I personally don't even think I earn points in an extreme sort of way, but by engaging with these programs, you can really earn a lot of points over time. And there are a lot of ways of earning points for free, aren't there, Matt?
You don't even need to necessarily spend money. And like some of these tricks are particularly useful for people, maybe like your parents or your grandparents, if they're not flying often and they're maybe not engaging that much with Qantas and Velocity. You do need to have activity in your account every 18 months with Qantas Frequent Flyer or every 2 years with Velocity to prevent the points in your account from expiring. So these are some really easy and free ways that you can earn points with Velocity. You can sign up for eRewards, which is a company that gives surveys out. And if you complete your first survey within 90 days, you get 750 Velocity points for free. You just need to obviously spend the time filling out a survey. You can also link your Velocity Frequent Flyer account to Didi. Didi's a rideshare app, and you earn 1,000 bonus points just for doing that. And if you're a Virgin Australia Business Flyer member, you can also link your Didi account to Virgin Australia Business Flyer and get 1,000 bonus points in there as well. And with Qantas, there is quite a few ways as well to earn Qantas points for free. You can join the Red Planet survey community and you get points each time you fill out a survey. You can earn points for free by signing up to Hoyts Rewards. You get 100 points just for signing up and linking your Qantas account. Qantas also has something called a points accelerator. So with the points accelerator, you get 100 points per activity, up to 300 points, like things like linking your Qantas account to your Everyday Rewards account or to your Core Live Limitless account. You can also get 100 points for installing the Qantas Points Prompter browser extension on your computer. And this is a tool that prompts you to be shopping on the online mall to earn points if there's something you're buying which you could be buying through Qantas and earning points for. And the Qantas Wellbeing app as well lets you earn points for free. You can earn points by completing daily step challenges or weekly step challenges. Also, literally for sleeping, you can earn points for completing sleep challenges. I personally have a weekly step challenge set up with my family, and we're quite competitive with that. And the winner gets some points, and actually, the second and third place also gives a small amount of points as well. But there's just little things you can do which don't cost anything and can keep the points ticking over in your account.
From what I hear in the past, there are a suspiciously large number of frequent flyers that were going to get hearing checks because they were giving, I think it was off the top of my head, 1,000 points just for going in and having your hearing tested. So these are probably people who know that their hearing is perfectly fine. They have no issue, but look, it's 1,000 free points, and I mean, look, I don't have time for that sort of thing. But if you're that desperate for 1,000 points, it was an option, and I'm really not surprised that that one disappeared because I think that was announced for a purpose and people were just milking it a bit too much. So there are probably other more legitimate ways that you can earn points for free. For instance, as Matt said, shopping online is one of the biggest ones, and that's money you're spending anyway. And it doesn't cost any extra to shop through places like Qantas Online Mall or Velocity eStore because you're not actually buying from those places directly. It's just a link you click that tracks your shopping session directly with the merchant. The merchant tells them how much you spent. On that basis, Qantas or Velocity award enough points. And it's just such an easy thing to do. And honestly, this is what I do instead of buying gift cards. I don't want to lose them. I don't want to have to stand there showing my ID and, look very suspicious at a checker. I just want to buy my thing and move on. And that's exactly what that allows you to do. And they run a lot of bonus offers through those portals as well. So definitely keep your eyes peeled. But the point we're making is there are just so many easy ways you can earn points on the ground. It does not matter if you're not a regular flyer. It doesn't matter if you're not a business traveler. It doesn't even matter if you're someone who goes on holiday once a year or even less than that. Anyone can earn points on the ground, and it is such an easy way to get a balance up, to start saving money on travel, and if you save enough points up, to fly in style without it breaking the bank. And that really is what points are all about.
New to the world of points or want to level up your game? You can learn even more and improve your travel experience with Australian Frequent Flyer membership. It's completely free to join AFF and participate fully on our lively discussion forums. But did you know that AFF also offers Gold and Platinum memberships with even more benefits? AFF Platinum members get access to our full library of frequent flyer training courses and can attend all AFF webinars. There's 8 per year that I host. And AFF Gold and Platinum members also enjoy discounts with Qantas Club, Lounge Pair, Frequent Flyer Concierge, and more. For full details or to sign up, visit australianfrequentflyer.com.au or click on the link in the show notes. Have you ever flown in first class? Well, flying in first class is no doubt a bucket list item for a lot of people. It often seems out of reach, but thanks to frequent flyer points, you don't need to be rich or spend tens of thousands of dollars to experience what is essentially the epitome of luxury when it comes to commercial air travel. When Chris and I flew first class for the very first time, separately on different flights, I might add, we were certainly not rich and famous, and well, we're still not, but we did have enough frequent flyer points. So, Chris, when was your first class flight?
So, Matt, I was 24, not long out of uni, working 3 days a week. Not the type of person you would typically see in a first class cabin. But I'd been saving up my points. I really wanted to do it. And I lived in Brisbane at the time. And back then, Emirates had a daily Airbus A380 flight from Brisbane to Auckland. So this is a 2.5, 3-hour flight, right? This isn't 15 hours to Dubai. The great thing about that flight is that because it's so short, you don't need a huge number of points to be able to book it. So my humble little stash of points back then was enough to get me a first class ticket one way, Brisbane to Auckland, and it left in the morning. So at least it's a daytime. You're awake, you can enjoy it. But it was less than 60,000 points at the time, and it cost me about $100 on the side. So these days, you can book something similar, which is Sydney to Christchurch. It's 64,500 Qantas points and only $200. So most credit card sign-up bonuses tend to be more generous than that. So almost anyone can fly first class. So here I was as the humble little 24-year-old. I'd never sat in 1A upstairs on an A380. And I'll admit, I dressed up a little bit to look like I fit in. I wore a tie. Looks nice in some of the photos. I was fancy, Matt. I was flying first class. Look, it was a fantastic journey. So you turn up at the airport, you go straight to first class check-in, and it was wonderful. They give you a letter back then. It was a personally addressed letter on gold stationery. Dear Mr. Chamberlain, here is your flight information. Your captain today is X. Here is your purser. Your flight time is expected to be whatever. Here is your gate number. And of course, you get the boarding pass with the basic information next to that. But it was, very fancy. And so I go from check-in to the lounge in Brisbane, which is upstairs. You've got a great view of the airport, direct boarding onto the aircraft. So straight from the lounge onto the upper deck, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is fun already. I'm really enjoying this. I don't have to be out with the public. I'm up here with the first class people. This is very exciting. But I get on, and it's it starts from the minute you sit down. So they come by with the drinks and the dates and the Arabic coffee and magazines, and the service is so over the top compared to the typical domestic economy flights that I would normally be taking. We take off, and it's just the minute that you're in the sky, the Dom Perignon comes out. So you can pretty much drink back what you pay in taxes just in the champagne on these sort of flights. But you're sitting at the front of the plane. I can close the doors. Yeah, it's a 3-hour flight, but I'm loving this, right? I have breakfast. There is no caviar on these flights, but look, I made up for that with the Dom. You can wander back to the back of the upper deck. So if you've flown Emirates on the A380 before, it's first class at the front of the upper deck, and then it's business class, and at the back there's the bar, which is shared between both cabins. So I'll admit I left first class to wander through business and back to the little cocktail bar in the sky. But to me, that was a new concept as well. So I was really keen to enjoy it, have a glass of champagne down there. And then I came back to the front of the plane and took a shower in the sky from Brisbane to Auckland on my points-based booking. They seemed a little bit surprised that I wanted to do it. I get the sense that your typical first-class customer who's paying full fare doesn't really need to shower on a 2.5, 3-hour daytime flight in between cities. But I wanted the full experience. I wanted just to love it. And it was a fantastic flight. And every time people ask me what was one of my favorite flights, I always think of that one because it was the very first time I got to experience something that incredible on a plane. And having done it on 3 hours, it made me want to do it long haul. So after that, my first long haul first class experience was an op-up. So that's a complimentary upgrade where you just don't expect it. I had a business class ticket on Etihad back in the day from Sydney to Abu Dhabi on their 777. Oversold in economy, so they bump people up from economy into business class. Business class then gets too full. And at the time, I had Etihad Gold status, and I'd done a status match, probably from Qantas or Virgin back in the day. Etihad ran a pretty open status match campaign, but I had my Etihad guest gold number on the ticket, business class passenger. Too many people booked in business class. What do you do? Well, I guess someone had to go sit in first class, and I was more than happy to volunteer. And that was a 15-hour flight because of the winds that day, and I slept for 10 hours nonstop. It remains the best sleep I've ever had on a plane, and it was the first time I'd flown first class long haul. So I was pretty spoiled from the get-go as far as first class is concerned, but I so rarely get to fly first class these days. It's still special when I get to do it. I'm lucky if I get to do it maybe once a year on points, if that. It's so worth it.
I absolutely agree. My first time flying first class, I was, I think, 22 years old, and it was really special. I was sitting in that seat like, wow, this is like, what did I do to deserve this?
And what airline did you do that on?
Oh, that was Emirates as well.
Yeah.
Even now, like when I've only flown first class a couple of times, like long haul, and it's still really, really special. I feel very, very lucky just to have that opportunity, to earn points in the way that we do in Australia, and to be able to use those on airlines like Emirates. Yeah. So my first class flight was actually, it was a random Emirates Fifth Freedom flight. Yours was a Fifth Freedom flight from Brisbane to Auckland. Mine was from Larnaca in Cyprus to Malta. Of all routes.
You have to be different.
I actually just needed to get between those two places. I was on a trip and I was looking at options, and Emirates came up as the only direct flight. And I was just going to buy an economy ticket, but
no, you
I
have
went
points,
on.
Matt.
I did have some Qantas points to spend, and it just so happened that the distance between Larnaca and Malta is just under 1,200 miles, which puts it in Zone 2 on the Qantas Frequent Flyer Award chart. And back then, it was actually only 36,000 points for first.
So to clarify, you paid the same number of points to fly first class on an international flight as you would have back in the day to fly business class, something like Sydney to Perth on Qantas, because that's a longer flight. It costs more points.
Yeah.
You've taken a shorter hop in a better cabin, so you've spent the number of points as you would have burned on a domestic ticket for your suite.
That's right.
Well done.
I mean, the taxes were, I'm going to say that the taxes and carrier charges were between $200 and $300, probably closer to $300. There was a bit of a carrier charge. Although being a Fifth Freedom route, they are generally less with Emirates. Nowadays, by the way, it would cost you 43,500 Qantas points to book this flight in first class from Larnaca to Malta. And it did take a couple of attempts to book this because for some reason, the Qantas website does not let you book a ticket originating in Cyprus. So I had to call up. The first person I spoke to couldn't see the availability. I called again and sure enough, there was availability and I was able to book it over the phone the second try. But it was such a good experience. Unfortunately, being a flight out of not out of Dubai or one of Emirates' main ports. It was just a priority pass lounge, I think, or a Plaza Premium or something at the airport. So the lounge was nothing particularly special, still nice. But once I was on board, there was just me and one other, older business person in first
You were the
class.
young, excited, oh my God, this plane has a door on it. The other person's like, oh my God, who let him on the aircraft? Is it that sort of setup?
I got the feeling this was a flight leaving at, I'm going to say around 9 a.m.
Okay.
And I got the feeling that the business person he'd probably just flown in from somewhere in Asia or very far away, and he just slept the whole flight. So really there was 3 crew members just looking after me. They come around before takeoff with the dates and the chocolates and the Arabic coffee and a glass of champagne, and there's a fancy notebook. They offer pajamas. Like it's really it's next level.
The little spa kit hidden underneath the mirror at the front. You've got everything in this
and you've got this is on the 777. So unfortunately, no onboard shower and no onboard bar. But the rest of it's this basic, like the basic seat is the same as on the A380. There's a little mini bar on the side of your seat with drinks. Not that you're ever going to be wanting for anything, because they're constantly coming through asking, what they can get you. And I have to admit, because it's not something I do really much at all. I'd never flown first class before, and I studied the drinks list before I got on board to sort of plan what I was going to try, because the opportunity to try some of those quite expensive spirits.
Did you go the Hennessy Paradise?
I did have a glass. I probably came off that flight buzzing. It was about a 3-hour flight, so there was just enough time to sort of experience no caviar on that particular sector, but just enough time to experience all of that. The thing I remember most is that back at this time, this was in about 2019, I think, when you booked a ticket using your Qantas points for Emirates business or first class, you did get the chauffeur drive on this route. Unfortunately, Emirates no longer offers the chauffeur drive service on reward tickets. So I got picked up in Larnaca, and when I got to Malta, there was a gentleman waiting for me in a suit to take me to my chauffeur-driven car. He had a sign, with Emirates branding and my name on it. And I was, a young bloke wearing a T-shirt and jeans and probably some sneakers. And I went over and introduced myself, and the look on this guy's face, you could just tell he was like, you have to be kidding, in his head.
Are you lost? Are you trying to steal someone else's car? The train is that way, sir.
The funniest part is he dropped me off at a backpackers hostel.
So you got that first class experience for those couple of hours in the middle, and then, quickly went back to normal life after that.
Yeah, that's right. But a memorable experience. I'm really happy to have done it.
And the great thing is with Emirates first class, I mean, there has been a lot of talk in recent years. The carrier charges now to book those flights, especially on long haul, can be quite expensive. So I priced a return from Sydney to Paris in first class for one person, and you're looking around $3,500 Australian dollars in total co-payment. So that includes the genuine taxes that you expect to pay, but also the vast majority of that is Emirates carrier charges. But there are some routes and things that don't have those charges attached. So if you do that Sydney Christchurch route that I mentioned, they no longer fly Brisbane Auckland, which was my original flight, but you can still do Emirates A380 first class from Sydney to Christchurch. It's only about $200 in addition to points. And this one works for me, and I'm saving it for next time I need to go to Singapore. If you book Emirates, so firstly, they have a fifth freedom flight between Melbourne and Singapore. You don't need to fly to Dubai to fly Emirates in this case. And if you book Melbourne to Singapore, it's over $1,000 one way if you're in business or first in the total charges you pay. But if you book an itinerary starting in Singapore, so a one-way flight, not part of a return trip, one-way flight, Singapore to Melbourne on Emirates, it's less than $100. Because there are no carrier charges if you happen to book that segment. So yes, I've booked that once and had to change it because I had a couple of clashes and things, but I am really looking forward to doing that. And it's a daytime flight out of Singapore too. So if you would like a first class experience that's not out of this world expensive, if you can afford $100 in cash, I think from Singapore, it's just over 100,000 Qantas points.
107,700 Qantas points.
There you go. It's, you can probably knock that off in 1 or maybe 2 credit card sign-up bonuses over time, or just save your points up a little bit. But it is so worth it. I've done that back in the day from Singapore to Brisbane, another route that they no longer fly, which was also a daytime flight. And that is also a very, very memorable flight. So absolutely recommend it.
I did actually do this flight last year in first, the Emirates daytime flight from Singapore to Melbourne, booked using my 107,700 Qantas points. And from memory, the carrier charges and taxes was 84 Singapore dollars. It was an absolutely fantastic experience. It was a longer flight, so you have time to really experience the full service. There was caviar. I had an excellent lunch, had a nap, and then woke up and had more food. And then because it was a daytime flight, it was a treat in two ways. I mean, firstly, just being in, I was the only passenger in first actually on this particular flight. From the moment I got on the plane, I did not see another passenger until I got off in Melbourne. And being a daytime flight, because most of the time when I fly from Singapore to Australia, it's overnight, and so you basically just go to sleep if you can, and then and get off feeling a little bit like a zombie, unfortunately. So that was nice in both aspects. Just a little tip, by the way, if you book that as a return flight out of Singapore, so Singapore, Melbourne, Singapore, you don't pay the carrier charges on either leg.
Wink, wink. So that's very handy. So think about that if you're planning 2 trips to Singapore. So you might make a one-way booking up, not necessarily in Emirates first class, to get yourself to Singapore. Return trip Singapore, Melbourne, Singapore, and book a separate flight home. So
yeah, unfortunately, as we discussed earlier, this flight won't be around for too much longer though. So if you want to take advantage of the Melbourne-Singapore route or the Singapore-Melbourne route, if you want to save on the fuel surcharges, do get in quick. Another quick tip, by the way, if you're looking at Emirates to Europe, if you book business or first class on Qantas Points out of Australia, the carrier charges are unfortunately very high. However, if you book on another airline up to somewhere in Southeast Asia and then take Emirates from there, it's a lot less.
These are secrets.
So, Chris, I know since then you've had a few other flights on first, but are there any other first class products that you're yet to try that are on your bucket list?
The one for me that has so far eluded me is suites on Singapore Airlines. Like, I've seen the cabin, I understand what the offering is, all that sort of stuff. I've been in the private room, but I've not had a chance to actually fly it. I had a plan to do this in 2020. I'd saved up enough Velocity Points. Back then, you could use Velocity Points directly to book Singapore Airlines first and suites, and I had it all planned out. I think I was planning a trip to Istanbul. I'd worked out how I could mix in Etihad's A380 first class apartment while I was at it as part of the same trip. But yes, Singapore suites, especially now that they've reconfigured them, if it happens to be a quiet flight and you can do the whole double bed thing where you combine 2 suites into one, that would be very, very, very cool. So there's no shower on that plane, there's no bar, but Singapore Airlines always has excellent service at the front of the plane. And
even in economy, their service is usually excellent.
Yeah, I'm a bit more spoiled than you, Matt. I think a lot of, my personal trips, I try and book, if I can, first class if it's available. But I've done the Emirates, Etihad, Qantas, Qatar, American Airlines on everything. I've done a fair few first class, BA across the Atlantic, but the one that has eluded me is Singapore Suites, and I really want to do that. So what is it for you? You've only done a couple of first class. You might have a few on your list.
Yeah, the one that I would really, really love to try one day is Lufthansa First Class, the Star Alliance airline based in Germany. I've flown them quite a lot in every other cabin, premium economy, and business. I've never tried them in first class. When you're flying in first class, I've seen they have a separate terminal for you at Frankfurt Airport,
Indeed.
a first class terminal with a separate lounge, and you get a chauffeur drive to the aircraft.
They send a Porsche to your private terminal to drive you to the plane because, why would you want to walk at regular Frankfurt Airport? That's for the commoners. You are in first class. This is the special part.
On one hand, who needs that? It's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be offered, that sounds really quite nice.
And you can book it on points. So these sound like things that are just expensive for the 1%, but Lufthansa First Class is also something you can book on points. But it is a bit tricky, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, they're in Star Alliance, so you can book this using KrisFly Miles, the Singapore Airlines program, or even you could buy Life Miles or buy Aeroplan points from Air Canada or United Miles. It is a bit tricky to book, though, because generally Lufthansa only releases seats through partner airlines about 2 weeks out from departure, and sometimes they'll even release extra seats like 1, 2, or 3 days out from departure. So it does work best if you're able to book at the last minute, but it is definitely possible. If you book it through Aeroplan, you might only pay $100 in copay because with Aeroplan there's no carrier charges. So it's definitely doable, but so far it's eluded me, but I will work out a way to do it. How would you book suites, Chris?
Well, it's really hard to book suites other than with KrisFly Miles these days. So Singapore Airlines is very, very protective of their premium cabin inventory. And in the past, as I mentioned, you could use Velocity Points directly to book suites, but that feature still has not come back since all the COVID shutdowns and everything else that caused all the pauses in Virgin's administration. So you really, from Australia, the easiest way is to use KrisFly Miles. And the challenge for me, and it's probably why it will stay on my bucket list for quite some time, is that now it's a bit harder to earn KrisFly Miles than in the past. credit cards across the board earn fewer points per dollar these days than they did 5-10 years ago. And then on top of that, Singapore Airlines conversion rates from most of the banks have now worsened, I will say. So where in the past you might have been able to transfer 2 credit card points into 1 KrisFlyer mile, many of the major programs now use a 3-to-1 rate. So you need 50% more credit card points per mile, and you're earning fewer credit card points to begin with. So it's one of those things that I'll just have to bite the bullet one day and just do for the experience. But I mean, the hard part too is finding the availability. They're very good at releasing seats at the advantage rate. If you're not familiar with KrisFlyer, they have 2 redemption rates basically as their classic rewards. They have Saver, which is the really good one, but it's harder to find a seat at Saver and it requires fewer points. And there's Advantage, which is priced, it's not exponentially higher, but it is very noticeably higher in terms of the number of miles you need, and there is more availability. So I very rarely see seats on Saver between Australia and Singapore on the A380. I can't actually remember the last time I've seen one. I normally see them on the 777 flights. So it's one of those things, if I actually see a Saver seat on an A380 from Sydney or Melbourne into Singapore, I'd probably bite the bullet and just do it. But
I have seen a bit of Saver availability on the A380 and suites on the Singapore to Delhi route.
There is a conference I have to go to in Delhi probably next year. This is. I should start looking for flight. All right, maybe I'll knock it off on my.
If you're sitting on a large pool or a large balance of Velocity Points, though, you can also convert those Velocity Points into KrisFlyer miles. You take a bit of a haircut in the conversion. It's 1.55 Velocity Points gives you 1 KrisFlyer mile, but that is another way that you can transfer some points into KrisFlyer.
And it's great too, because if you happen to have a lot of Velocity Points, it unlocks so many more partner airline options as well. So you can use KrisFlyer miles to book, as you were saying, Lufthansa first class. Now, Lufthansa is not a Virgin Australia or a Velocity partner. So if you have a lot of Velocity Points, maybe you have a lot of points coming in from Flybuys, it is a great way of being able to redeem for flights across the Star Alliance by converting your Velocity Points to Singapore Airlines. So it's a bit of an obscure example, but I've even done this to redeem for LOT Polish Airlines because I needed to fly between Oslo and Warsaw. Now, this wasn't in first class, but it just highlights the flexibility of the KrisFlyer program. But I think next time I earn KrisFlyer miles, I'm going to have to try and book one of those Singapore Airlines suites because it looks very, very nice. And I want those pajamas, Matt.
Would you say it looks pretty sweet?
It looks pretty sweet indeed.
Well, as you're probably aware, Australian Frequent Flyer is an online community of frequent flyers who share their travel experiences and tips and tricks and discuss the latest news and deals. And most of the interaction, of course, happens online on our forum. But from time to time, we do also have events where you can meet other members in real life. The main event that AFF holds each year, and AFF's been doing this for the last 17 years, is the annual weekend gathering, which this year will be in Brisbane from the 18th to the 20th of October, which is just in a few weeks from when this podcast is released. I'll be there, and we're also expecting quite a big turnout of AFF members as well this year. So it's basically an opportunity to catch up with other members, to meet the AFF team, network with other frequent flyers, and over this weekend, there'll be basically 2 dinners on the Friday and the Saturday nights, some activities on the Saturday. And it's a great opportunity to find out also some of the best tips and tricks that are just too good to be shared online. Often our members will discuss these over a glass of wine or 2 at these offline events. All AFF members are welcome to attend. And of course, if you're not an AFF member already, you can sign up now. It's free to join. And I'll link to the thread in the show notes where you can learn more about the event. And for those coming along, I look forward to seeing you there very soon. And Chris, that's all for this episode.
It is, Matt. And look, we hope you enjoyed it. We can't wait to share more travel pointers with you next month. And for more information about anything that we discussed in this episode, see the links in the show notes. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.
Happy flying.
Safe travels.